Alright, yes, Assalamualaikum everybody. How are you all? I hope that you all are doing well. Welcome or welcome back to the class. In today's class, we will be discussing the AS level biology 9700, the topical MCQs of biological molecules, specifically from the topic of water. First of all, before we begin with this topical MCQs of water, you must know some of the basics for the water, that water is a polar molecule. First of all, you must know this, that the water is a polar molecule. How it is a polar molecule? It is a polar molecule because the oxygen in the water is having a slightly negative charge, and the hydrogen in the water, both hydrogens are having the slightly positive charge. So these slightly negative and slightly positive charge gives the polarity to the water molecule, right? So this is one of the properties of the water, that it is a polar molecule, and due to this polarity it can also form the hydrogen bond, right? For example, like this, it can also form the hydrogen bond. The H will bond to the oxygen of the another water molecule, like this. Alright, so now let's move on to question number 1 over here, which is from October-November 2020 paper 1 question 12. The question says that which properties of the water reduces the temperature changes inside the cell. So the first property which has been given to us is the cohesion, right? Cohesion, what is cohesion? Basically it is the sticking of the water molecules together due to the hydrogen bonding. So cohesion is an important process like in the transpiration in the plants, but it does not significantly contribute to reducing the temperature changes inside the cell, right? And if I talk about the second property over here, so the second property is the latent heat of vaporization. As we already discussed, that it is the energy which is required to change the water from the liquid to the gas without changing its temperature, right? It converts the water molecules, or you can say the water itself, from liquid to the gas without changing its temperature, right? So as the water is having a high latent heat of vaporization, it means that the large amount of heat is required to convert it from the liquid to the liquid water into the vapor, right? From the liquid water, if you are converting it into the vapors, you need to have a very large amount of heat, right? And because the water has to gain a lot of heat energy in order to vaporize, hence the water bodies, you can say, or you can say the water inside the cell also does not allow the temperature to be easily changed, right? So hence, yes, we can say that 2 is the property of the water which is helping basically to reduce the temperature changes inside the cell, right? And if I talk about the third property they have given to us, which is the specific heat capacity. Basically, what does it mean by the specific heat capacity? It is the amount of heat energy which is required to raise the temperature of an object of a unit mass by 1 degree Celsius, right? So, and if I say that the water has a high specific heat capacity, it can clearly mean that it can absorb or lose a lot of heat without a significant temperature change, and this also helps to maintain a stable internal environment in the cell, right? So if I explain it even more further, so we can say that any increase in the temperature of the water, its kinetic energy must also increase, right? And if the kinetic energy of the water increases on the increase in the temperature of the water, right? So what will happen, that the hydrogen bonds which will be holding the water molecules together, for example these are the water molecules, and the hydrogen bonds which will be holding the water molecules together must break, right? And we know that hydrogen bonds are the strong bonds, right? So it will require high energy for them to break. So we can say that the high specific heat capacity of water can absorb or lose a lot of heat without significant temperature changes, right? So we can say that yes, 3 can also be our correct answer according to the question given. So hence the correct answer over here would be option C, 2 and 3 only. Alright, so now let's move on to question 2 over here, which is from May-June 2020 paper 1 question 12. The question says that the diagram represents the role of the water in the living organism. Then it says that which roles are dependent upon the hydrogen bonds between the water molecules. So they have given us the 3 roles of the water molecule, right? Water basically, and then they are saying that that which of these roles is basically dependent upon the hydrogen bonds, right, which are basically between the water molecules. So let's read it one by one and try to figure out the correct answer. Role of the water in the living organism, one says that carries the dissolved substances. Now basically the water has the ability to carry the dissolved substances due to its polarity, right? It is mainly due to its polarity and not basically due to the hydrogen bonds directly. So this cannot be our correct answer because the substance is being carried by the water due to the polarity, right? And then in the 2 they are saying that provides a constant environment for the aquatic organism, right? Acha, basically over here this is correct. Why? Because this depends upon the water's high specific heat capacity, and the high specific heat capacity of the water is basically due to the hydrogen bonding, and we know that hydrogen bonding is very much strong bond, and a lot of energy is basically required to break or make this bond, right? So you can say that yes, the constant environment which is being provided for the aquatic organisms is due to the high specific heat capacity, which is due to the hydrogen bonding, right? And then in 3 it says that the temperature control due to the evaporation. So basically the temperature control due to the evaporation is dependent upon the water's high latent heat of vaporization. We have already discussed what the latent heat of vaporization basically means. So you can say that it allows for the cooling through evaporation. So basically the water's high latent heat of vaporization is also due to the hydrogen bonding, in short, hydrogen bonding, right? And breaking these bonds required significant energy. So we can say that temperature control is due to the evaporation is also involving the hydrogen bonding, right? So we can say that the correct answer over here would be option D, 2 and 3 only. Now in question number 3, which is from February-March 2020, paper 1-2, question 12. The question says that hydrogen bonding explains many of the properties of the water, including the high latent heat of vaporization and high specific heat capacity. So basically they are saying that the high latent heat of vaporization and the high specific heat capacity is mainly due to the hydrogen bonding, and they are the very renowned properties of the water as well. For which processes in the plants is hydrogen bonding in water important on hot sunny days? So they have given us a series of 4 statements, and we have to identify that which processes in the plants is hydrogen bonding in water important in the hot sunny days. So let's try to figure out the correct answer. Preventing the denaturation of enzymes in the leaf. So yes, I think this statement is correct. Why? Because we know that enzyme functions the best in a certain range of temperature, right? They have a certain range of temperature in which the enzyme function at their best. So basically the water's high specific heat capacity due to the hydrogen bonding, what will it do? That it will help to stabilize the temperature in the leaves, preventing the excessive heating and enzyme denaturation, because we know that the high specific heat capacity of the water resists the rapid changes in the temperature and helps to regulate the changes, right? And this property is obviously due to the hydrogen bonding. Then in statement 2 it says that reducing water loss by the evaporation. So you know that the hydrogen bonding gives a high latent heat of vaporization as well, which means that the large amount of heat is required to convert the water from the liquid to the gas state, right? So this slows down the water loss because each water molecule that evaporates removes a lot of heat energy, preventing the excessive evaporation, right? So hence statement 2 is also correct. Then statement 3 says that allowing leaves to cool down quickly at night. So basically this statement is incorrect. Why? Because water's high specific heat capacity means that it will resist the temperature changes, right? So as a result the leaf will cool down slowly, right? The leaf will cool down slowly and not quickly because the water holds heat for the longer time. So hence this statement is incorrect, right? And then if I talk about the statement 4 over here, which is holding a column of the water in the xylem vessels together, it is due to the cohesion, which is due to the hydrogen bonding, obviously, right? We have studied that the cohesion is basically the attraction or the bonding of the water molecules together, which is due to the hydrogen bonding, right? It will keep the water molecules attached to each other, forming a continuous column of the water in the xylem vessels. This ensures that the efficient transport of the water is taking place from the roots, right, from the roots to the leaves, even on the hot days when the transpiration rates are very much high, right? So yes, we can say that statement 4 also involves the hydrogen bonding in water, which is important on hot sunny days, obviously, right? So hence the correct answer for this for this question must be option B, which is 1, 2 and 4 only. I hope that this MCQ is clear to all of you. So now let's move on to question number 4, which is from October-November 19, paper 1 to question 13. The question says that a student wrote 4 statements about water. Then they have given us the 4 statements about water and they are asking us that which statements are correct. So we have to identify the correct statements regarding the water, right? So let's move on with the statement 1. Statement 1 says that the water has a high specific heat capacity which maintains the temperature of the water within the cell. So yes, this statement is correct. Why? Because we have discussed it already in the above MCQs as well, that the water's high specific heat capacity, which is due to the hydrogen bonding, helps to regulate the temperature within the cell. How does it help to regulate the temperature within the cell? Because we know that the hydrogen bond is a strong bond, right? And it requires a lot of energy to break this bond, or you can say a lot of temperature is needed to break this bond, right? So it will maintain the temperature within the cell and it will cause the temperature to be stable, right? The temperature will not fluctuate a lot. The water temperature will not fluctuate a lot, right? Because of the high specific heat capacity, which is due to the strong hydrogen bonding, right? So I hope that statement 1 is clear and this statement is correct. So then let's move on to the next statement. Next statement says that mammals rely on water having the relatively low latent heat of vaporization to keep them cool. So this statement is incorrect. Why? Because we know that water is having a property of high latent heat of vaporization, right? It means that it requires a lot of energy to evaporate. The water requires a lot of energy to evaporate. This property is why the sweating is more effective for cooling, right? So this statement is incorrect because it is saying that the low latent heat, whereas there is no low latent heat, there is the high latent heat due to which the effective cooling basically takes place. Let's move on to statement 3. The statement 3 over here says that when a negatively charged ion is added to the water, the slightly positive charge on the hydrogen atom is attracted to the ion. So we know that water is a polar molecule, right? And it has an oxygen which is slightly negative and it has 2 hydrogens and both of them are partially positive, right? So obviously if the water molecule is having a partially positive charge, so whenever the negatively charged ion will come, right, so it is going to attract it. So this statement is correct. Then in the statement 4, it says that when surrounded by water, non-polar molecules tend to be pushed apart from one another. We know that water is a polar molecule, and when non-polar molecules come in the polar molecule, so what will happen, that the non-polar molecules will clump together, right? They will clump together in the water due to the hydrophobic interactions rather than being pushed apart, right? So this statement is incorrect because over here they are saying us that the non-polar molecules are pushed apart from one another. They are not pushed apart, basically they clump together on one side, right? They make their clump because of the hydrophobic interactions, right? They are not pushed apart. So the correct answer for this MCQ must be option B over here, where the statement 1 is correct, 2 is incorrect, 3 is correct and 4 is incorrect, right? So I hope that this MCQ is clear to all of you. Alright, so now let's move on to question 5 over here. Question 5 over here is from May-June 18, paper 1-3, question 12. The question says that which statement about the properties of water is correct. Let's read these statements one by one. and try to figure out the correct answer. Option A over here says that bonds between the hydrogen atoms causes the water to have a high specific heat capacity. Now we know that the high specific heat capacity of the water is due to the hydrogen bonding, right? And hydrogen bonding is between the water molecules, right? Not between the hydrogen atoms, right? It means that it is between hydrogen of one water molecule and the oxygen of the other water molecule, the hydrogen bond forms, right? It is not between the hydrogen atoms. The hydrogen bond is not between the hydrogen atoms, rather than it is between the hydrogen of one water molecule and oxygen of the other water molecules. It is due to the hydrogen bonds between the water molecules, not the bonds between the hydrogen atom. So hence statement A, or you can say option A, is eliminated. It is incorrect. Let's now look at option B over here. Now option B says that the high latent heat of vaporization of water is due to the presence of the hydrogen bond. Yes, we know that the high specific heat capacity as well as the latent heat of vaporization both are due to the presence of the hydrogen bond. ठीक है, these both properties are due to the presence of the hydrogen bond. What is the high latent heat of vaporization? It is the energy which is needed to convert the water from liquid to the gaseous state, and it is due to the hydrogen bonding. So this statement is correct. Let's look at the other options as well. Option C says that the high specific heat capacity of water causes cooling during the evaporation. Now this specific part, the cooling during evaporation, is because of, not because of the high specific heat capacity, but it is because of the high latent heat of fusion. Latent heat of fusion, right? It is not due to the high specific heat capacity. So this statement is also incorrect. So option D over here is saying that water can dissolve amylopectin as it has a hydrophilic side chain. Hydrophilic side chains, right? So this statement is partially true, but it is misleading as well. Why? Because it does not explain you that why water dissolves the amylopectin, right? Water can dissolve amylopectin because of its polar nature, but it is not explaining it, right? If we look at all of the options, so the best option suitable over here would be option B, that the high latent heat of vaporization of water is due to the presence of the hydrogen bond. Hence option B is our correct answer over here. Alright, so now let's move on to question number 6. Question number 6 is from October-November 2015, paper 1 to question 11. The question says that as a frozen lake warms after a cold winter, mineral nutrients are brought to the surface. Which properties of the water contribute to this process? Right, so statement 1 over here says that its greatest density is at 4 degrees Celsius. So basically, if I tell you the crux of the question, so basically in the question they are saying that which properties of the water contribute to the process of nutrient cycling. Basically when the frozen lakes warm up, तो हमारे पास जो nutrient cycling होती है उसमें क्या चीज़ें जो है वो कौन सी प्रॉपर्टीज़ जो है बेसिकली इन्वॉल्व होती हैं. सो वाटर हैज़ अ ग्रेटेस्ट डेंसिटी एट 4 डिग्री सेल्सियस एंड वी नो कि वाटर का जो हमारे पास फ्रीजिंग पॉइंट होता है वो हमारे पास क्या होता है 0 डिग्री सेल्सियस, राइट. तो 0 डिग्री सेल्सियस पे जो वाटर है वो ऑलमोस्ट आइस बन जाता है एंड आइस फ्लोट्स ऑन दी वाटर, राइट. सो दिस डेंसिटी डिफरेंस कॉजेज द मिक्सिंग व्हेन द आइस मेल्ट्स ब्रिंगिंग द न्यूट्रिएंट टू द सरफेस, राइट. तो ये एक प्रोसेस होता है. इट हैज़ अ हाई स्पेसिफिक हीट कैपेसिटी. अच्छा, हाई स्पेसिफिक हीट कैपेसिटी इज़ नॉट डायरेक्टली कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटिंग टू द न्यूट्रिएंट साइकिल, राइट. ये बिल्कुल भी जो है वो न्यूट्रिएंट साइकिल को कंट्रीब्यूट नहीं करती बिकॉज इट इज़ बिकॉज ऑफ द हाइड्रोजन बॉन्डिंग, राइट. और हाइड्रोजन बॉन्डिंग में भी ये टेम्परेचर को स्टेबल करने में हेल्पफुल होते हैं, हाई स्पेसिफिक हीट कैपेसिटी और हाई लेटेंट हीट कैपेसिटी, राइट. लेकिन जो है वो फॉर दी मिनरल न्यूट्रिएंट या न्यूट्रिएंट साइकिलिंग इसमें ये रोल नहीं प्ले करेगी, राइट. Statement 3 says that it is a solvent, so it means that the water has the ability to dissolve various substances, right. So obviously it will be crucial in bringing the minerals and nutrients to the surface. So yes, this is correct. Then statement 4 says that its molecules forms the hydrogen bond, right. It is correct that yes, hydrogen bond is a unique property for the water, but they do not directly affect the nutrient cycling in this context, right, in the context of the question. So this is incorrect. So hence the correct answer for the question number 6 over here is option A, 1 and 3 only, right. Let's move on to question 7, which is from May-June 15, paper 1-3, question 24. The question says that the statements are about the properties of the water Now they have given us a list of 4 properties over here, and then they say that which properties are important for the translocation in the phloem, right? So what is basically translocation? सबसे पहले let's understand the concept behind the translocation. Translocation is basically the process which takes place in the phloem, and it is the process where the sucrose is translocated, or which is being transported from the source, the site where it is made, to the sink, to the site where it is required or where it will be used up, right? So this is what translocation is. So they are saying that which properties of water are helpful in the translocation of the phloem. Now let's look at the statements one by one, and let's see that which properties are important in the translocation in the phloem, basically which is the transfer of the sucrose, or the, you can say, the transport of the sucrose from source to sink. So you have to talk about those properties which help in the transport, right? Requires a lot of heat to evaporate. It is basically this property of the water relates to the latent heat of vaporization, but this is not directly relevant to the translocation in the phloem, so we will not consider this. Statement 2 says that holds a lot of heat. So holding a lot of heat, basically the property of the water which allows to regulate the temperature is the water's high specific heat capacity, right? But it is not primary factor for the phloem translocation, so we will not consider it as well. Then statement 3 says that it is able to form the hydrogen bond with the other water molecules. ये वाली जो property हमारे पास, that the water molecules can form the hydrogen bonds with the other water molecules, is very much important. Why? Because the cohesion of the water molecules, which is being due to the hydrogen bonding, allows the water to move more efficiently through the phloem, right? It will move more efficiently through the phloem. So yes, it helps in the translocation. Fourth statement, it is saying that water is able to form hydrogen bonds with the other polar molecules. It also helps the water to interact with the other substances. As for example, it helps to make the bond of the water with the sucrose, or you can say the sugars within the phloem, right? So it will also help in the translocation of the sucrose from the source to the sink. So this statement is also correct. It will basically help in the transport of the or you can say the translocation in the phloem, or the transport of the sucrose from the source to the sink, right? So hence the correct answer for this MCQ is option D, which is 3 and 4 statements are correct. Alright, so now let's move on to question number 8 over here, which is from May-June 15, paper 1 to question 9. The question says that the statements are about the properties of water. So they have given us the 3 statements regarding the properties of water, and then they are asking us that what allows a small insect to rest on the surface of the pond, right? So basically, if I shorten up this concept for you guys, so what allows an insect to rest on the surface of the pond is the surface tension of the water, right? Is the surface tension on the surface of the water. So let's read the statements about the properties of water and try to figure out that which property of water is correlating with the surface tension, right? So statement 1 says that ability to form the hydrogen bonds with the other molecules, right? So the ability to form the hydrogen bonds with the other molecules, for example, the ability of the water to form the hydrogen bond with the other water molecules, right? So what will happen over here, that it will result in the cohesion, right? What is cohesion? Cohesion is the force of attraction between the similar molecules, or you can say it is the tendency of the water molecules to stick together, right? So and it is because of the hydrogen bonds, right? We all know that it is because of the hydrogen bonds. So what will happen, that it will result in the surface tension. Why? Because what is the surface tension? Basically, it is the tension which is created on the surface due to the attraction between the water molecules, right? Surface tension is basically due to the cohesion between the water molecules, or you can say the attraction between the water molecules at the surface of the water. एंड स्मॉल इंसेक्ट्स, जैसे कि फॉर एग्जांपल पॉन्ड स्केटर्स होते हैं, कैन रेस्ट और स्लाइड ओवर द सरफेस ऑफ द वाटर without breaking the surface of the water due to the surface tension, right? So this statement is correct. Then the second statement says that less dense when frozen. This is the property which causes the ice to float on the water, right? This is the property which causes the ice to float on the water, but it is not directly contribute to the surface tension, and it is also not crucial for the insects to stand on the water as well. So you can say that this statement doesn't come in line with the question. Alright, then statement 3 over here says that able to hold a lot of heat. So this is related to the water's high specific heat capacity, right, which helps to regulate the temperature. But it does not directly relates to the surface tension or the ability of the insects to rest on the surface of the water. So the correct answer for this MCQ must be option C, 1 only. Alright, so now let's move on to question 9 over here, which is from May June 15 paper 1-3 question 24. The question says that the statements are about the properties of the water, and they have given us the 4 statements about the properties of the water, and then they say that which properties are important in transpiring plants to prevent the enzymes in the leaves from being denatured, right? So enzymes, we know that enzymes are denatured at the high temperature, so the temperature must be stable for to prevent the denaturation of the enzymes, right? So let's look at the options one by one. The statement 1 says that it requires a lot of heat to evaporate. Yes, this statement is correct. Why? Because water has a property of the high latent heat of vaporization, right? High latent heat of vaporization, which means that it can take a large amount of heat energy to turn from the liquid state to the gaseous state, right? And this is, we know that this property, we have discussed it several times in the above questions as well, that this property is very much crucial during the transpiration, because when the water evaporates, it removes the heat from the leaves, right? So it is important in the cooling down effect of the plant. So it will help to maintain a stable temperature, preventing the enzymes from denaturation. So statement 1 is correct. Then if I talk about the statement 2 over here, which is that it retains a lot of heat, which is a basically property of the water. Related to it is the high specific heat capacity, right, which means that it can absorb and store a lot of heat before the temperature changes. While this helps to stabilize the overall plant temperature, it does not directly contribute to the cooling during the transpiration, right? So this is also, we will not consider this as our correct statement. Then if I talk about statement 3 over here, it is able to form the hydrogen bonds with the other water molecules. Yes, this property is correct for the water, that yes, water is able to form the hydrogen bonds with the other water molecules, which results in the cohesion between the water molecules, right? And this cohesion does not directly protects the enzyme from denaturation, right? So it has no effect on the in protecting the enzymes in the leaves from being denatured. So we will not consider this as a correct statement for our answer. Then statement 4 says that it is able to form the hydrogen bonds with other polar and non-polar molecules. So this is obviously incorrect. Why? Because the water primarily forms the hydrogen bonds with the other polar molecules, right, not with the non-polar molecules. So hence the correct answer for this MCQ must be option A, 1 only. I hope that this MCQ is clear to all of you. Now that was it for today's class, right? We have alhamdulillah covered all of the topical MCQs of the water which were in this worksheet. So we have discussed the test for the biological molecules. We have made a video on it. Then we made a video on carbohydrates. Then I made a video of topical MCQs of lipids, proteins and water. So the videos for all of these topics under the biological molecules is uploaded on my YouTube channel. You can go and check that out. You can watch it and have a good grip on the topical MCQs of the biological molecule chapter. Alright, so that was it for today's class. I hope that you found this video helpful, and if you guys did, do consider subscribing this channel and hitting the like button. Do remember me in your prayers. Allah Hafiz everyone. See you guys in the next class.